All right, so we should be rolling. Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Today I've got another special guest. This time we've got Jeff Harris, who is one of my good friends and roommate from college. We had essentially met early on in my powerlifting days. He was getting into powerlifting too. And this guy's kind of like my right-hand man all the way through college and training. So I'm excited for him to kind of share his perspective of our story. And also, he's moved on to coach college football as well since college. So without further ado, Jeff, go ahead and introduce yourself for us.
Hey, I'm Jeff Harris. Like you said, we met through the gym, powerlifting, because I saw him in there, and actually he was a big name to some of our professors, kind of introduced me to who he was. And then we ended up doing it together and living together. And like you said, now I'm on to coaching. I'm a football coach at Olivet College. I'm our DBs coach and special teams coordinator, but I spent some time coaching lifting as well. So we're going to talk about how that's going to tie in together. So.
Yeah, so I wanted to we'll just take it from the beginning, because whenever I met you, you were just like this really raw, strong guy, you know? And I'm trying to remember, what was the guy's name who introduced us? Was it Abby?
Abby,
that was it.
Might have been Abby, yeah.
Pronounced it wrong. I think it was him, but he was kind of like, hey, I'm looking to get a powerlifting group together. And he kind of brought your name up. And funny enough, he had asked me about powerlifting, and it seemed like he was going to be the more serious guy about it. And then I'm pretty sure I never saw him again.
No.
But you and I definitely connected. And I'm trying to remember what your lifts were.
Nope. You've gone frozen on me, so I haven't heard the last couple of words.
Excuse me. There you go. You there?
Yeah, I'm back. I left the message you in the chat. Be like, you there?
Good. Yeah, but I was just saying, you were big into high school football and then brutally strong. And I can't remember, was I your first introduction into true powerlifting, or were you getting into that before?
So I had a coach when I was in high school. He told me, like, hey, I think you'd be really good at powerlifting. And I always flirted with the idea, but never really did it. And then I was starting to have that idea, and then you kind of talked to me into it, and we kind of went from there on it.
Yeah, I have a tendency to be like, hey, if you're thinking about it, you should do it.
Yeah, still trying to get me to do it to this day.
Yep, still trying to get you back into it.
I'm so injury prone now. I don't know if I could last. I just got hurt playing slow pitch softball. So,
hey, you're not going to roll an ankle, but doing powerlifting.
Might crack my shin or something from the weight, but it's fine.
It'll be fine. But yeah, and then from there, do you remember how long it took to actually get you into a competition? It wasn't too long, was it?
No, I think it was a pretty quick turnaround because, like you said, I was already raw strong, so I just needed to figure out the logistics of everything, and then we headed to Maryland States down in Fredericksburg, I believe. And kind of just started from there.
Yeah, and I still remember that meet specifically because you and I, and that's kind of the great thing about our dynamic sometimes, is my approach to competition in powerlifting is a little bit more like, I'll handle what I can do, and then the numbers take care of themselves. But you had a totally different approach, and I'll let you describe that here in a second. But just as successful, you were a successful powerlifter, but a great example of two different ways that you could do it. Do you want to give your perspective on that meet day and how you were feeling?
Yeah, so I still looked at it. Competition was like a football game. Like you hate the other team. You're bred the whole week. You hate these guys. So I walked in and I saw my competition and they're warming up and they're fun, they're laughing, they're joking, they're having a good time with each other because they're just trying to beat personal best. But my opinion is like I'm here to win and like don't. And for some odd reason, I don't really want them talking to me when I'm trying to get ready for it. But because my mentality is I hate you, so don't come over to me. But I got better as the competitions went on being that. But yeah, it definitely came with more of a football mentality of I'm here to beat you. I don't care what the number is going to be, but I'm going to try to beat you. So, the goal is always try to win, not necessarily PR, but more I'm taking home the gold. So that's kind of the outlook I had when I first started.
Yeah, and I remember just being shocked, like, because we would be like in the warm-up line or like lined up for attempts and someone would miss a lift and you would be like almost like yes, like celebrating, and I'd be like, whoa, like we can't do that.
Yeah. Or they're like, hey, you did a really good lift. What? Well, talk to me.
Right. Yeah. And it's just interesting because like, once the meet was over, I think you could turn that off. Like once the dust had settled, whoever won, you could talk to them.
Right. Yeah.
But that was like part of your focus was, all of your energy went into those are the enemy, and I'm going to prove it by moving this weight.
Right. And that was like like I said, with the football mentality, when I got it a lot from my senior year of high school. We had a new coach come in and he talked to us and was like, it's us versus them. And that was the mentality every day. Like he'd make up scenarios to like just make us angry. Like, oh, you should have heard what that kid just said about you or whatever. Or like that coach said this about you before he left, or, just kind of would try to fuel the fire. And it's like, oh, it's me versus you. I hate you. So yeah, that was definitely, it would, like I said, it settled down as I got used to it, but that was definitely the mentality coming in.
Yeah. And it certainly helped, I think, because you were strong enough to back it up a bit. Whereas sometimes I caution people who are newer getting in, and if you have that, like, my whole purpose for this meet is to go and win, but you haven't been training for very long and you don't have the lifts to truly compete, you could be really discouraged.
Yeah.
And I think it just happened to work out well that, you had that strength base to back that up and kind of like build momentum by winning your first meet at states and then moving on and eventually winning a collegiate national championship, which we'll talk about, and getting some records, which, that's a snowball and a great example of like how you can be successful with a different mindset than maybe something that I would preach to someone just getting into it.
And, it's funny you say that, like the help in the back of thing too, because when I went to the battle for the Great Lakes, there was a cat that was like that. And I wasn't super vocal towards other people, but he was super vocal towards me. And you need to hurry up. Yeah. You need to hurry up warming up and he would like talk all this stuff. And then he'd go out there and like my opener for deadlift, he can't get it. I'm like, you might not want to be a jerk if you can't back it up,
Yeah. And it's interesting. There's that fine line too of like, I don't know. And going back to football, because we're leading in that direction too. I remember in high school when I played football, it's like, if you're going to talk smack, back it up.
You better bring it.
Hits, right? Yeah. Don't talk smack and then, bring something soft.
Yeah, get ran over.
I've run into similar situations, I would say, like at meets where you see people and it's to each their own. Like it takes each person a different process to get where they need to be to compete. And, I've told this story before. I don't think I've told it on the channel, but whenever I used to help out Penn State, their powerlifting team, I go down occasionally, train with them. There was this one lifter I was training for 2019. Yeah, 2019 Collegiate Nationals. And I was the favorite going into that meet. Penn State's lifter for my weight class would not talk to me or like even acknowledge me. And I would like go in and train, and you're like cordial with everybody, and he just wanted nothing to do with me. And I'm pretty sure on meet day at collegiates, because I just took that energy, kind of like you. I'm
Right.
different. Like I'll just take it, and instead of being angry at the person, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna prove you wrong, kind of situation, which I think is where we get similar. But I think I ended up out totaling him by like 600 pounds. I like didn't need to deadlift.
Right.
And that's that fine line of like, at that point, let's just be friends.
Right.
Like we'll live together, and it's just not close enough. At these like big meets where it's close, I can understand some tension, like you're kind of describing. So that kind of moves me into talking about bigger meets. Was it your second meet where you did USPA Collegiate Nationals? I can't remember if
Yes,
there was
yes, it
one in
was. Yeah, it was
okay.
Collegiate Nationals in the Battle for the Great Lakes, and then the I don't remember what they called the one at Liberty University, but it was IPF Worlds, like not the
Yeah.
but it was
Or
like
is
a
it IPL?
IPL, yeah, IPL World. What do they call it?
Was it the World Cup?
Commonwealth Games. That's what it's
Oh,
called. The
okay. There you
Commonwealth
go.
Games, because it's from in Virginia. So it was like the IPL Commonwealth Games.
Yeah. So can you kind of describe to me, I don't know, what it was like to move up the ranks like that? Because you're going from the small meet fairly accelerated. If I'm remembering, it was within a year you went from local meet to collegiate nationals, and then probably within another year went to the international level.
It,
What
it
was
was
that like?
it was all in one year because 2017 2018 was all I did it for. But I want to before we start. You said the accelerating at the state meet. Now, you remember why I accelerated at state meet? Because you came up to me on my last deadlift. I had never pulled that much before, and you came up to me like, "You want to win?" And I was like, "Yeah."
Ah,
And you didn't even tell me the number, and it was like 30 pounds over my PR, and that's how I got there. And I was like, "Okay."
I
But
have a tendency to do that.
but
Just like throw a giant number on and be like, I know this motivates you here, and you just would get pissed off and do it.
yeah,
Um,
it's probably because you smacked me on my back real hard.
Probably,
But
that got like 50 pounds out of that back slap, I'm sure.
so yeah, so the transition was good, and it probably got better as I learned the sport itself, and two, getting proper stuff to help me with lifts, like for instance, I didn't have squat shoes or anything like that the first meet. I was just in the whatever, the chucks or whatever we called them, just flat deadlifting shoes, and I wore it for all three events. So I'd say that's part of it that helped, where I had quality belts, wraps, things of that nature. But really just getting the experience and getting it under your belt, the first one to the next one and everything. Learning the techniques on how to be really efficient when it comes to your lifts. Learning how to properly arch your back, like lock in your shoulders, things like that on bench press. How to properly deadlift. Because when I first started deadlifting, trying to get strong, I was sumo. Then you're like, yeah, you got kind of long femurs. You might want to do conventional. So I was like, okay, we'll try conventional. And then just learning the sport, learning how to do it properly. Obviously, like you said, raw strength is great and all, but it doesn't win all the time because you got to do the right things. And getting that under my belt and having really good people in my corner, such as you. I've had like meets that you couldn't make it. I had people that could make sure I was set, ready to go. But I would say like one thing that was beneficial was like being a super competitive person. Jumping from states to nationals was just like, okay, we got a few more people we got to beat today, or nationals to the international stage was, we got to beat these people. Or at that time, I kind of had an idea of what the squat record was going to be, and I was like, okay, let's try to get that goal today. But overall, the transition was a great time, great experience. Met a lot of really good lifters and things. And yeah, but like I said, learning the ins and outs of it on top of being pretty competitive made it a very smooth transition to each level.
Yeah. And I think you're another great example of like that those transitions worked well. I think because you're naturally athletic with the football
Well, thank you.
background and like being able to know your body in space. Somebody who's just coming off the couch and starting powerlifting might have struggled with that, I would
Right.
say. And then also I wanted to ask, because you competed in USPA and IPL, which is similar but slightly different than like USAPL, IPF. And in my experience, I've had, some judging that I would say is slightly more harsh at the international level, even though the rule book's written all the same. So I'd like to have your perspective. Did you seem to notice any change in judging throughout the levels?
I could probably say when I went to the international level, like when I got the world record for squat, I was 2-1, and I had been in local and national meets, and I usually get all 3 white lights when it comes to my squat. So it was a little bit different. They got me for depth on one of my hips, but I mean, again, I also squat pretty, like, kind of not straight like at most people. It's a little bit cockeyed a little bit because of when I played football. That's how we were taught to do things. So it was a little bit different. So I could see maybe potentially where one's higher than the other because it feels the same on both, but if one leg's back a little bit, it could cause an issue. But I said the international meet, it was they were a little bit more strict when it came to the squat depth. Like I said, because usually I don't ever have any issues with getting the depth or even getting one red light, and I did, which still counts, but ended up getting it when I usually don't. So
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's a good take home point for anyone who's listening. And I don't want it to come across like I was complaining that the standards were more strict. The best thing we can do as lifters sometimes is just say, like, hey, yeah, it is what it is. Maybe this is what happened, like you said, with the cockeyed stance. And if they are being more strict, you've just got to adjust. So, that's a good mindset to have. And I would probably, say if I had to choose, I would rather them be more strict at the international level than less strict because you don't want world records being broken with high squats or something ridiculous.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm walking through here. You did your international meet and you set the world record squat. I don't know if we fully established this. Remind me again, was it junior 93 kilo or is it 90 kilo? Do you remember?
90 kilo because yours is 93 and your
Oh,
lady.
yes.
So ours was 90 because I always had to do those crazy cuts to get down to that weight, but I don't miss doing that for sure. but yeah, so it was the 90 kilo junior division world record for squat.
Yeah, and that's a big accomplishment.
It's not held today.
Remember, we had our wall of fame.
Yeah.
I wish I had a picture of that thing to throw
I still
up
do.
on the screen.
I still got it. So
maybe I'll add that in the thumbnail if you'll shoot that over to me.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, we had all our medals hung on the wall, and that was just really cool. And honestly, looking back, man, I wish I would have just, because I was talking to Ingrid last week on here, and she had said how kind of those were the good old days kind of situation. And sometimes I look back and I'm like, I wish I would have stopped and just appreciated, what we had, because that was such a blast to, go into the gym and just like be doing our thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. I appreciate that. And I think I'm definitely a better lifter and a better person from having you all around me. can only speak for myself.
Same here. I mean, that's like I said, like having good people in my corner when I was learning it. Like it's hard to beat out a guy that competes for, or is on the United States team. He's got a pretty good idea what's going on. So, that, like I said, it helped in my transition of what I needed to do better or different. And even if it came down to, if you're going to film your squats, you need to do it from the side. You don't need to do it from the front or whatever it is, like just the little details that can help you be better at the sport. I was lucky enough to have that. So,
yeah. And that's something I spent a long time thinking that you didn't need training partners. And it's funny because I probably thought that way even until recently. Like, I do all my training by myself still. But if I think back to those days, it was, even though we weren't getting all of our sessions in together necessarily, the bouncing ideas off of each other, we'd be like, stuck on bench. What do you think? You think it's a shoulder issue, triceps, whatever? Or to have someone to call you out on your BS, like, if I was squatting a little bit high, you'd let me know.
right.
You'd be like, I don't know, are you getting there? And I'd be like, you're right.
Right. Or like even just having the morale of other people that have the same interest in you is helpful because,
yes.
I mean, there's obviously been times where, if I go in there by myself and I'm doing like a meet prep kind of thing, like where I'm doing squat, bench, deadlift with the 10 minutes in between, like that kind of starts to wear on you after a while. You're like, man, this is a long wait. I got to wait again. And we're doing it. But like having you guys around, we can joke around in between the sets, all that good stuff, just to like keep the morale going. Or, man, I had a crappy lift today, whatever. Yeah, you'll bounce back. It's not a big deal. Like just the mental part of it too is pretty beneficial too, to have people that have the same interest in you and having people, like I said, in your corner. So
yeah, and that kind of led us to moving to the football aspect and outside of powerlifting. And as we moved on, we spent the one summer together coaching the Mountain Ridge High School football team, just in the weight room and technique. And I would say I certainly learned a lot from that because it's one thing to help someone who's already established in the weight room. Like meeting you early, you knew how to squat. And like maybe I was just showing you, like you said, hey, you can arch your back a little bit more, tuck your shoulders on the bench. But teaching 9th grade students how to lift weights is a totally different beast because they hardly know how to climb a set of stairs, let alone squat to depth.
Right.
Do you want to kind of elaborate like your thinking as far as, because we wrote those programs, mostly you, as far as what they needed to do, kind of go off of that a little bit.
Yeah. And then like what you're saying too, is if you got everybody established, like minor tweaks are pretty easy, but like you said, a group full of 9th graders, you got some guys that are almost developed into who they're going to be. And then you've got some kids that haven't really hit puberty much yet. So, or just being awkward. Like some like we had 4 squat racks. So what we did was we put our guys that could do it, they were together, and the guys that couldn't do it, we had to slow them down. So like, even though we were programming, this is what we wanted, these cats over here can't do it yet. These guys are getting there. We got to figure it out on what we need to do. And if it just meant not a lot of weight, whatever, that was fine. Like I knew we had a group that came in and we were like, man, we got a lot to work with these cats. These guys, they're going to be fine. But I think we did a phenomenal job with that group. Just seeing the strides that they made throughout the 2 or 3 months we were with them, just learning how to do the lifts properly. So once they can put weight on it, it's not an issue of, oh, well, you're bending over at your back and not your hips, whatever it was. It was when we got to those increments, we could do it. And I think we did a good job of like load management of what we could, what guys could take and what couldn't take. And obviously we did some stuff where we had to do some mental toughness stuff, but the true lifting part of it, I thought we taught really well. We had some really strong ninth graders come in. Like once they got to August, I mean, we had, I think 4, 5, or 6 of them squatting over 300 pounds. So like that's pretty big. Like, I mean, I think we struggled a little bit in bench press because we didn't have the greatest bench presses there. So it made it a little bit harder, but they did a pretty good job of that. Hang clean, just being explosive. That's the most common athletic lift you can do. They got pretty good at that. Obviously that takes a while, but they were starting to get the hang of it and get it to where we needed to be. And like you said, it started us from, okay, no weight on the bar, PCP pipe, hang cleans. We're doing a circuit to just get the motions down. Now we got to put them together, different things of that. I think overall they got really, really strong for what the time period we had. If we kept doing it for another year or two, they'd have been extremely strong, I think. But what we had was, I think we had a pretty good results because of how we managed the room itself. So we weren't just go throwing weight 3 sets of 10. Like, not everybody in the high school level has a true strength coach. It's a football coach that goes to the gym sometimes. So he thinks he's got a great idea, which by all means, some of them do a good job of doing that. But when you got true guys that know the ins and out of how to load management and teach the techniques that need to be done and why it benefits the way you do it, makes it you see a lot of big strides come in through guys, especially at that age, because like I said, they're still developing, learning, things like that. So like I said, I think we did a really good job of what we could do with the guys.
Yeah, I would agree. And like kind of reflecting on that, I think we had a really solid season of like progress. And you had mentioned starting them with the bar and PVC pipes, and that's literally what we did.
Yeah.
And I kind of want to emphasize too, you had mentioned we had several people squatting over 300 pounds, and that was a true 2-depth 300-pound squat. And I think sometimes, and football has a stigma for this, like the football squat depth. And I would love to know where like that thought process came from. I feel like it just kind of like found its way into sports and sports coaches, and they learned somewhere, they were like, you can only squat so deep or else it'll hurt your knees. And then everyone, it like infected the entire United States, I feel like.
So
I literally was talking to my students today, some of the football players, and they were like talking about squat depth or something. And I was just explaining to them because someone said like, oh, you don't squat too deep, it'll hurt your knees. I was like, whoa. It's actually better for your knees to squat deeper, right? It's like using your hips more. But yeah, I think we did a good job of just like taking it back to the basics and teaching them how to do the movements, right? And I like to hope, we've all been there as the ego-driven high schooler who doesn't want to squat to death, but I like to think some of those kids kept those habits and like could continue getting stronger even after we were gone.
Well, because I was still coaching, I just wasn't the strength coach after the year. So coming back, so it was funny. So like the guys that we still had on, and they did their max squats, they were doing it, and then the guys that weren't with us weren't doing it. So it's like, yeah, you squatted 400, he's only squatted 3, but he went to depth and you didn't. So, but I wasn't the judge of it at that time, so it was none of my. I wasn't going to say that doesn't count, but we did. I mean, we truly sat to the side and made them squat to depth, and it wasn't going to count. And you had 2 guys that have been in meets. We know what the judgment looks like, and so it kind of helped. But kind of going back to what you said with the whole like it hurts your knees. Now it's like I don't know. It could be correct. A lot of people don't want athletes squatting to depth because they're never going to be in that position.
Yeah. And I have heard that before. I'm going to let you share what you think on that, and then I will share my thoughts. And I'm just curious.
Yeah, right. I mean, I get the validity of it, but the idea of you're never going to be that deep in a squat and we're training for your sport. But at the same time, when you go to depth, you're going to hit all your muscles in your quads and stuff. So like why you wouldn't, I get your idea, but you also can get that out of with the hex bar deadlift. The idea is like, we're not going to get down that deep to get, so we're going to just pull it from there to there. I get this idea, but my guys, when I'm back in the strength conditioning world, we're going to go to depth. So it's embedded in me now. So it's too late. I don't care. I don't want to see the science on it. I just want, we're going to do it.
Yeah. But my kind of rebuttal to what you were saying, the idea that they won't be in that position, is more of like, well, if you never train that position, and yes, they're not supposed to ever be in that position, but what if like a lineman gets folded up for some reason and like their leg gets stretched in that range of motion, that they never train? I feel like that's when you get hurt, is like that time you're not supposed to be in that position, but you end up being there.
In it.
So like, why not just train through it? It's not like it's necessarily hurting you. If anything, you just have to do a little less weight to squat a little deeper. And then like in that off chance that you get forced into a bad position in your sport, then maybe you are less likely to get hurt because your musculature is like used to that flexibility.
It's a good point. You think about it that way.
Yeah. But I feel like that's an argument that will literally never die. I will die before that argument.
Yeah, you have the two schools and they're always going to be open. So
right. Yeah. And but I'll always be right.
Yeah, right. Exactly. You got the credentials, so what does it matter? Like,
right. What do they squat?
Right. Yeah. What's your squat, Max? Okay, I want to hear it.
So, you've moved on to college athletics, and I do want to throw in, you also have a teaching background, much like myself. So, you've got a couple teaching minds, we'll put it that way. And I think sometimes that affects the framework at which you come from. If you ever see a coach, especially in high school sports, who doesn't teach, but they coach, usually you can tell by how they handle situations. And then like you get someone with a teaching background, usually they're better at, like, for example, structuring things or giving clear instructions and communication to what they want. So with that kind of in mind, how has getting into the college football game been?
So, as much as I did the high school thing for a couple of years, and it's not my passion, that's football. So, but I would say you'll see in most levels, guys that have been high school coaches where they're teachers do a really good job when they get to the college level, because they the things that they do in every day in a classroom reflects the same thing as on the field. Like you're talking about classroom management. It's what you're talking, like you were saying, is basically what classroom management is. So now I just translate it over to when I'm in practice or I'm in a meeting or whatever it is. And that's like, and just when we did it at the strength conditioning for Mountain Ridge, it's the same thing. We had to go to the bare basics of what we had to do. And it's just like teaching. You don't teach chapter 6 until you get through 1 through 5. So it was the same idea. And you learn different ways to structure it, and you deal with the kids in the same way of, okay, they're different today. Like that's not Jimmy today. He's upset or whatever. So it can affect him in that way. And it's the same thing when I come into my meeting rooms and stuff. Like I said in the spring, our coach is like, we're not going to move on with any other coverages until you're comfortable with our guys are doing the right thing right now. And it took us probably longer than it should have, but they needed time. So like we went to the bare basics of what we're going to do. And one thing I always do, it's kind of like, you have like when you warm up in the classroom, you always have something for them to do right out of the gate. We've got an everyday drill. It's kind of the same idea as we're going to get you ready for these angles that we're going to take for defensive backs and stuff. It's kind of the same idea. But for sure, being a teacher has helped me be a better coach. Better sudden change. Something's going to be different. You have the greatest lesson ever. Someone's going to hate it. So you got to figure out how to get it in their brain to like it or learn from it, whatever. Or you said, I have 5 great activities today. Well, I got 25 minutes left of class. You got to figure out, you got to be a sudden change all the time. And it kind of reflects in football the same way. Is like, yeah, like I just got through all my indie periods in 20 minutes. I got to figure out something for 10 more minutes, things like that. And for sure, being a teacher helped me a lot become a better coach. And because when I first started coaching, it was the same mentality of, we're going to be tough. We're going to be all these things. And, the kids don't respond that the same way too. That's another thing that helps you is like in your classroom, you realize they don't respond the same way that you and I did. Like someone yelled at us at practice back in the day. It's like, okay, well, I just got yelled at, whatever. Nah, you can't always yell at every kid. They don't always take it that way. And they don't always love it. They'll sometimes be angry at you and not want to listen, but it's a little bit different. They don't always respond that way now. So just taking my lessons that I learned as a teacher and just applying it on the field. And it's the same thing. You're teaching. It's like a fit ed teacher. They're a teacher. They teach, physical education. It's the same spiel. It's just we now do it on a practice field and we play games. Like it's the same concept.
Yeah. What are some of the lessons that you would say, like, as a coach, and I know you've also coached other powerlifters before, which I do want to get into that, but, like, what do you hope your players take away from a football season? Because, not everyone's going to walk off, and let's be honest, most people won't walk off and join the NFL, or get paid. And that's totally okay, but they have to understand football's going to come to an end. Just like as powerlifters, we understand, hey, this isn't going to go on forever. The music stops at some point. What do you think some of the most important lessons that they could take away are?
Well, I think one thing is obviously I think sports are really good. They're very close to life. I think, you have in a single football game, there's 140 plays, whatever, how many it is. Not every play goes your way. Not everything in life goes your way. So it kind of reflects, and they say, it builds character. No, it reveals it. I find out who you are. And then one thing I've learned since I've been here is, getting upset and letting it affect the next thing that goes on in life or in the game. They match. They'll go together. So like my biggest thing in our spring was that I took out of it was, hey, calm down, keep your head on you, because if we lose your brain, we're going to lose you the whole time. So if we lose the mind, it's over. So let's calm down, be ready to play the next play. You lost that one. I don't care. It happens. We're all going to make a mistake in life. We're going to make a mistake in a game. I'm going to make a mistake as a coach. Like it's going to be all right. Play the next play. Focus on the next thing. And actually, that's one big thing that we talk about in our program is our 1-win motto. And it's literally the whole idea is whatever you're doing, win it. So if you're studying for a test, you win that test. If you're on the football field, you win that play. Whatever it is, just one specific thing at a time and get those victories one at a time kind of thing. So I think just learning how to deal with changes and sudden changes and getting beat or having a good play and having a bad play. We can't be here all the time. We got to be here. We got to be closer in our level-headedness. We can't get too excited about one play and then get really down on ourselves the next. So they're learning those different things in life. And one thing I always make sure that my guys know, and I think it helps in the long run, is they know you care. They're going to be more willing to do anything for you. Like if they trust you and you can trust them, you're going to be fine. And that, so you build lifelong relationships that matter to them and to you. So I came in and not going to name specific people or anything, but there's been some family things that go on in their lives that have, it's not fair for an 18-year-old kid to go through, but they've had to go through it and I've had to deal with it, and not deal with it necessarily, but I've had to counsel them, comfort them, all those different things. So, they learn that we do generally care about them. And I think they understand that, or we care about their well-being, not just football, it's all of it. So just the different life lessons that you get in the game is huge. Just being able to be level-headed about thing, learn to get to that next thing, and really just understand that like we're building a relationship with you guys that's going to last forever. So after you walk across that stage, I still want to see you someday and be like, oh man, how's it going? Different things like that. And I think those are the big lessons that especially when I was a player, like when I knew my coach cared about us, and like, I'm not here just to coach you in football. I'm here to make you a better man. I took that specifically too when I was in high school. When I figured out he was doing that my senior year, like he just got there and he was building us to not just be football players, but to be better men. I was better in the classroom. I was better at football. I was better in how I acted, whatever. And I didn't act crazy or anything, but I could see the change and the growing up that like he did for me, and maybe not everybody took it that way, but I took it like it was gospel, so everything he was preaching, I was buying it. I was eating it up. And then, I had a really good senior year of how I did academically and all that stuff. So there's a lot of great lessons that come with sports, and and it's a great thing to have, especially for these young adults that we have.
Yeah, and I just think it's funny that because we hadn't talked about this, one at a time motto that you all have been having, but one of the things that I've adopted over the years with powerlifting, and you'll laugh at me for this, and it is pretty funny, but I'm a psychopath. What can I say? But like, as you know, you've been around me when I compete and am amped up for big lifts. Like, I like to talk to myself. And one of the things, the affirmations that I've picked up on over the years is just this idea, one at a time. And I, in part, picked that up from my coach, Bill McCarthy, as well. He would always tell me one at a time on meet day, because I used to do this, and I've seen people do it also, where bringing it back to powerlifting, I don't take an opener seriously. And then if you don't take 90% of your max seriously, it's still going to feel darn heavy, even though it like shouldn't be a max. And that would kind of lead me down this like spiral of like, oh, the opener's heavy. So then the second attempt's a little heavier than it should be. And then maybe I don't fail the third, but I like don't try as much as I was hoping to on the third. And my attempt at solving that was adopting that one at a time mindset, because I was like, okay, the opener is the only thing in sight until I've done it. And then the second attempt is all there is. It's like one, and you're slowly building. And by the time you get to the third, hopefully you've earned the attempt that you wanted to have for your third. And remembering back, you had something similar where I remember, especially early in your lifting, your opener would move a little slow, and I'd ask, and you'd be like, I just wasn't trying.
Yeah.
Like, you'd end up being totally okay. You had a flip or a switch that you could flip that, for the second attempt, you would amp it up a little and it would move how it needed to. And the third attempt would go. And I would just walk away being like,
whatever.
Okay, whatever.
Yeah.
Like,
I remember the first time, because the first meet, I can remember the look on your face. You were just like, I said, I didn't try. You're like, what?
like, you only get 9 of these.
Right. Like, why didn't you try? Like,
Yeah.
that was hilarious. That I can remember that specifically now that you brought it up. I didn't try very hard. What?
Yeah.
As a coach, it's got to be like, oh shoot, we better figure something out. Like,
Right.
oh, I just didn't try.
And that's where communication, between coach and athlete, I'm sure you run into this on the football field too. Not the same situation, obviously, but like, in my head, I see something slow and I'm like, oh dear, we're in trouble. We need to like adjust this plan. And for those of you listening who have competed in powerlifting, you have 60 seconds once the lift is over to put in your next attempt. I'm going a million miles an hour. You, on the other hand, like, because you experienced it and you just know, you were like, well, I only moved it how I needed to move it to finish the lift. And in your head, you weren't rattled at all. That was the big deal. Had you like not tried and gotten rattled, which that's what I've done before. I've like early in my career not taken an opener seriously and been like, oh, it moved kind of slow, but I wasn't conscious enough like you were to say, oh, you just weren't trying hard enough, you idiot. I was just more like, oh, it moves slow. I have to rearrange this plan.
And maybe that'd have been like the powerlifting like ignorance that I had too, was like I didn't know what slow really looked like that much. So like I was just like, oh, I just didn't try, but probably looking at it like, oh God, he probably moved it pretty slow. But I probably had a little bit of ignorance to it where it wouldn't have, maybe that's why it didn't affect me, because I was like, it doesn't matter, I got it. So
that's a good point. Yeah, like the difference between the analytical or maybe over analytical lifter and like the doer who just kind of like ends justifies the means.
Yeah.
I would feel like. Yeah. And so just to bring it full circle there, because we were talking about coaching and that mindset communication, you've coached your share of people, right? I don't remember off of the top of my head how many, at least probably a handful or so, for powerlifting, not just football. Could you kind of share with me, like, what are your philosophies as far as progression and getting stronger over time?
Are you talking about just an athlete in general or specific athletes?
Let's start with like powerlifter. So like someone who's trying to get stronger in the bench, squat, and deadlift.
Gotcha. So most of my coaching has been female ones, which is a completely different way of coaching a football player, because they don't respond the same way as a football player would. And I've had a couple with some nice little attitudes attached to them. So definitely had to take it in certain ways. Again, like to me, it's just like teaching, man. You gotta build a foundation before you can do anything else. And and everybody sits there and goes, well, I know how to work out, I know how to lift, I know how to do this. Well, I'm not saying you don't know how to lift, but competing is a different story. Like there's different things you have to learn, the rules of it have different things like that. So when I took in 2 girls in 2018 to coach them, never had powerlifted before. My first thing is, when I talk to them, what are your goals for this? Like, what's your end game for this? Like, are you trying to be a national person, or are you just trying to PR and to be stronger? Like, what are your goals? What do you want to know? Okay, now that you want to do this, I want to let you know, these are the ins and outs of it. This is how much it's going to cost. This is how much the equipment's going to be. Like, if you want to be that elite person, you're not going to be able to just go out there in vans and, no wraps or anything. Like, it's going to be hard. If you're going to really invest in it, then we'll invest in it. If you're just doing it for kind of fun, like, that's fine. So kind of figuring out the goals and expectations. And then really what I do is at the beginning is we start out just trying to get good form, or like, how can I help you in your bench press because it's not a good lift for you or whatever. This is how we're going to teach it. We do real light, bare basics, get a lot of volume in there, and just learn how to do the lifts properly in a competitive manner. And then as that comes, we'll progress again. So I'm really big on, if you build a really good foundation, the house won't fall over. So, and I think that's been beneficial when we were coaching and just trying to get stronger in general. So just building on top of each other. Like I said before, you can't just go to chapter 8 of this book. You're not going to know the rest of it, so it don't make any sense. So we got to take it day by day, page by page, lift by lift. My one thing too is always, especially when I was dealing with the female athletes, you gotta be able to spin it too. Maybe today wasn't a good day. but without trying to kill the confidence of it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And trying to, okay, hey, I think you did all right in this and this, but we need to improve on that. But, you got to have positives and negatives in both, really. But when I was dealing with them specifically, you had to be very cautious in your wording of what you said, because you can kill someone's confidence quickly, and then they don't want to do it no more. And then like coaches do it all the time. They kill the love for the game for kids all the time and things. So just learning how I want to coach them or how they respond, and go, okay, I know if I'm going to have to critique her or him, I got to be able to give them a little bit of confidence and do that. Hey, your squat looked really good today, but we got to bench. Yeah, you didn't really arch your back well. Whatever it is, you got to have the positives and the negatives. And I do that more too with guys now. I try to give them a little bit of positives as I talk to them about critiquing. But yeah, overall, man, just you got to try to keep them, because they're going to have good and bad days. You got to try to keep the mental state there, and then build from the bottom and work up. Don't nothing in life that's worth the crap. It is not going to come to you tomorrow. It just doesn't happen that way. You got to work towards it, and if you want to be successful, it's got to be something that you got to gradually do. It just doesn't go here. We got to gradually do it. So that's kind of my philosophy on how I coach, specifically powerlifting too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And did you find anyone, because this is something I've run into, and, as the viewers know, or hopefully I bring this up occasionally, I'm not a coach by any means. I've programmed for people here and there. All of my programming is done by my coach, so that's out of my hands. But the people that I have worked with, it seems like to me, there tends to be, specifically to power lifters at least, there's like two ends of the spectrum. There's way too conservative and thinking that like anything that's approaching hard at all is too much, or like anything that kind of hurts, like if they're starting to get an ache, tendonitis, is an injury. Or the other end, the people who want to kind of like bang their head against the wall for months and months, and they're like, I maxed out this week, let's go ahead and do it again next week.
Right.
And it's like the spectrum of like those two ends. Did you have any experience like with your lifters that you dealt with being on either of those ends of the spectrum? And if so, like how did you handle that?
Most of it has been the end of, so like competitive when I helped so I had one girl, Maria was, she was not a lifter. So she was more on the end of, oh, it's going to get heavy. Like, okay, well, trust me, I promise you, you're going to get it. Like, I'm not going to give you a weight that I don't think you could do. Like, just reassuring them, you got to be kind of positive on that. And then when you have the ones that are a little bit less likely to go heavy, like, you got it in you. Girl, I've seen you. You just crushed that one. Like, you can go up 5 more pounds. You'll get it. I promise. Will it be tough? Yes, but you got it. I promise you'll get it, or whatever. Then you got your other side of the spectrum where they're wanting to just max out all the time, and they want to go super heavy. And I'm like, that's just not in the cards right now. And how I dealt with them is you gotta kind of reel them in some. You gotta bring them to reality in a good way. You gotta be like, hey, listen, like, we got to take it step by step here. Like, we're not going to be able to jump to 400 in 2 weeks. Like, it's just not going to happen yet. Like, you're at 280. It's not going to go that way. Let's take this smart, because one, you don't want to tear anything, get hurt, whatever. Then you've wasted your money and you've wasted your time to get hurt. And then all of a sudden you're not competing. So like, let's dial it back. Trust the process of, we're getting stronger each and every week. Like, you're seeing strides, things are moving differently. Your technique's much better. Let's keep it up. And then you got to just like I said, bring them back into, because everybody wants the answers now. They want the results now, but it's a gradual process. We got to graduate to it. We got to get there. We're not there yet. So let's stay the course, trust the process. Each day we're going to get a little bit better, and then kind of go from there. And I've always been a big fan of more of a football thing, but we had a coach at Frostburg, Coach Fitz. He always talked about, you're going to get 1% better each and every day. And after 365 days, you're 365% better because you got a better 1% each day. We're not trying to get 100% better every day. We just need one. We just need to get a little bit better each and every day. So I've always took that motto. I like that motto of like, we're not building Rome today. It's not going to happen, but we can lay some bricks down for it. And then tomorrow we can lay a few more bricks down for it. And then we eventually get to what we need to be.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, I mean, and I think I probably learned that a little bit from you. And I like to think you took a little bit from me as well. We kind of, we're probably two examples of either end of the spectrum, and we neutralized each other a bit. But, yeah, like that trusting the process, whenever you're having a bad day, just taking a deep breath and being like, okay, because today's bad, does that mean tomorrow's bad? Right. No, and what can I do to make myself better? And kind of in my experience, just to wrap things up a little bit, people, lifters, athletes, in my experience, tend to forget that you can get better outside of practice as well, like as that 1%. So to keep the powerlifter example, to keep it simple, everyone wants to bench press went bad today. I have to go heavy on squat tomorrow to make it up, or I have to do 5 more sets of lateral raises, or last week went poorly and I'm programmed the same weight this week, but I've got to bump it up just to make it better. All of that's trying to force numbers in the gym or in practice, but a lot of people don't tend to think about, well, you could get 1% better by eating some chicken and rice as your meal instead of that McDonald's before you go in to train, or something else to tweak that doesn't have to do with your programming. And once you kind of realize that, it opens up all these horizons of oh, I can fix this and this.
Right.
And
I need to do more mobility stuff, or I need to, maybe I can go watch a video on the technique that could help me, or different things that are not always just physical aspects.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So I just think that's a very good point that you brought up. 1%, I like it.
Yeah.
And don't try and overdo things, for sure.
So your next competition, you're gonna have a headband that says 1% on it.
1%er.
When you have a picture in it, I'm like, that's from the podcast.
Yeah. My whole singlet's just going to be your face.
After you put the medal on, it's just 1%.
Yeah. Perfect. Well, how about this? Next time you compete,
no,
we're gonna have the same thing.
Dude, I get hurt playing slow pitch softball.
Hey, I would too. I guarantee it. If I tried to run.
You convinced me a few months ago, and I started doing it, and then I tore my pec. So I was like,
that happens.
Yeah, I've torn my pec. I've gotten when I competed, I got sick every couple of months. It's
but
great.
Did you die? But did you die?
Inside, yeah, internally.
I'm gonna keep fighting this fight. I'll get you one of these.
You give me when I'm 70, just doing it just for the heck of
it. Yeah. I'll be in a wheelchair.
You'll be teacher of the year for the 8th year in a row at that point.
Yeah. This old man is I'll be so excited that you compete again. I just die of a heart attack.
Yeah. You get out of your wheelchair, you can all of a sudden walk Charlie in the Chocolate Factory when he finds the golden ticket. You're yeah.
Yep. Oh man. All right. Well, we're getting close on the hour mark, so I'm not going to keep you too much longer. But do you want to share with everyone where can they follow you and follow your work?
So if you're interested in any kind of football stuff from me, I've got a Twitter. It's Jeff Jeff Harris HARRIS 5050. Instagram, if you ever want to see, like, okay, he says he did these things, but could he really do it? You want to see the videos? Oh, Big Diesel 100. That was the old gym joke back in the day. So I stuck the name there. So it's Big Diesel 100 on Instagram. So those are the two platforms you could see the lifting parts or the football aspect of things.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, Jeff, I appreciate you coming on. It's been a blast. I'm going to end the recording, but it won't kick you out. So we can say like actual goodbyes then. But
Okay.
all right. Thanks for coming on. And for everyone else watching, please like and subscribe. We're growing, right? So I'm excited about that. And until next time, happy lifting.